Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. This indoor pond project was a 3-month labor of love that in many ways ended in a spectacular failure. But every great build starts with a journey, even if it's a freezing one. I'm beginning my expedition on a quiet Saturday morning in Heilbronn, deep in the heart of January. Walking along the banks of the Neckar River, one of the grandest waterways in Germany, you can feel the raw pulse of the aquatic world, even in the dead of winter. The river cuts straight through the city of Heilbronn, where I'm living, serving as a sanctuary for a massive variety of aquatic birds living right on the shoreline. As we look at the shore, you'll notice some species are native to these German waters, while others have fought to find their place here as invasive residents. The first one we've encountered is the Egyptian goose, a bird that has been part of our landscape for about 25 years now. This is not a scientific fact, this is more or less my personal experience. Growing up in a fish restaurant near Karlsruhe that my family ran, I remember these birds weren't present at all when I was a child. I knew every native wing and fin in these waters, and they certainly weren't among them. In our village, a legend spread that a few pairs escaped from a local zoo and simply never looked back, multiplying and reclaiming river by river for themselves in Germany. And today, here in Heilbronn, in Karlsruhe, and also in other cities, they rule the rivers. Further out, you can spot the cormorant, another species that many consider invasive here. Watch how this one stretches its wings to dry. It's a master hunter with a diving technique that puts almost any other native predatory bird to shame. While they can't quite match a penguin for duration, their ability to remain submerged for extended periods is a fascinating but also controversial part of our local biodiversity. I wanted to capture this for you to show just how much of our ecosystems are shifting. I'm even planning a dedicated video on the invasive crayfish populations later this summer. Back to the mission at hand. The water today is crystal clear, although it reveals a sobering side. The riverbed is littered with urban garbage. Despite the pollution that comes with running through a major city, the Neckar remains resilient and surprisingly clean compared to many other urban rivers across the globe. In a moment of pure nature, I came across a massive swarm of Riffle Minnows darting through the current. These are endangered species in Germany, so seeing them moving in such perfect, shimmering formation through the clear water was a true highlight of the morning for me. The river isn't always this transparent, but this January morning is special. You can even see a discarded shopping cart rested on the benthic floor, a stark reminder of the human footprint on these hidden ecosystems. Despite the litter, the general condition of the water is excellent, supporting a vibrant population of Egyptian geese that have already started their brood for the year. Seeing them spawn in mid-winter is incredible. Our native birds won't reproduce for months, which gives these invasive goslings a massive size advantage by the time summer arrives. Chilling on a nearby rock is a gray heron, the cormorant's primary competitor for resources here. Unlike the diving cormorants, herons are shoreline specialists, patiently stalking the shallows for smaller fish. But now, we finally reached our first critical stop of the day, an artificial pond right near to the city center. I visited this spot 2 years ago to set up a scud ecosystem, but today the challenge is much greater because the temperature has plummeted. To get the pond water I need for our project's biological foundation, I've had to bring a hammer to break through a 5 cm thick ice crust. 5 cm is roughly 2 inches. Crushing through 2 inches of solid ice took nearly 20 minutes of exhausting work. I actually had to strip down my jacket in the freezing air just to keep moving. It was a bit of a surreal scene for most of the people passing by, watching someone hammer away a frozen pond in their t-shirt, but I'd do anything to ensure we have the right microfauna for this build, and to keep you guys entertained. Once the ice finally gave way, I was able to fill my transport containers with the liquid heart of our future indoor pond. 2 weeks later, our journey continued into a local forest to find the rest of the hardscape and botanical elements we needed. The transition from city noise to the absolute silence of the woods is a Zen experience I recommend to everyone. All you hear are footsteps and the occasional bird call. This environment is where I find the ultimate inspiration for my paludarium and aquaterium scapes. Spent hours searching before finding a beautiful patch of haircap moss. It's vital to only take a tiny portion so the patch can regrow. Taking too much can cause the entire colony to dry out and die. I also managed to find some weathered sticks and bark overgrown with various moss species. While I'm not a moss expert, the aesthetic value they bring to a scape is undeniable. Especially for covering the technical infrastructure of the waterfall later on. After a long day of collecting, I took a moment for myself with a cup of turmeric and cinnamon tea, the ultimate way to decompress after a stressful work week. With everything safely packed, it was finally time to head home and start the build. The foundation of the scape actually began with a mountain of duct tape and plastic foil. I've learned from past failures that using expanding foam directly on cardboard or paper is a nightmare. The foam fuses with it, making it impossible to remove and potentially leaching harmful substances into the water later on. I used a high quality 3M duct tape to secure everything, but I made a tactical error here. I should have added a filter material before adding the foam. This foreshadowed some serious trouble that I'll reveal later in the build. And if you wonder what the casing of that little self-made filter is made of, it's an old tomato container that I just got from the grocery store. I just washed it, rinsed it, and it works perfectly fine as my new little self-made filter here. So I add this pipe that I just had laying around and need to cut it off so I'm able to work with it throughout the video more easily, but I will actually change the pipe opening later on. However, before I add the hardscape and the expanding foam, it's super important at this point to seal everything airtight with duct tape. because we will add expanding foam, and the expanding foam would clog the filter as well. Now, one note to myself and maybe also to you, it is smarter at this point to already add the filter material here. So in the end, you only need to take out the duct tape. But let's continue. Let's add some baking paper on my kitchen table, because I don't want to mess up the kitchen table with expanding foam and with terrarium water, or with river water, pond water rather. So I'm also just holding this baking paper in place with some duct tape here, and then we can continue with adding some plastic bag. This was just an old shopping bag that I repurposed. I cut it open and then I added to all of the sides, because if you add expanding foam in the next step and the expanding foam touches the side of your bowl ecosystem, then, or of your bowl, glass bowl, then it will stick to it and it's impossible to get it off. So in last scape, as I mentioned in my large 52 gallon South America tank, check it out in the top right if you want, I did the same thing but used paper on cardboard, and this really caused so many problems down the line. That's why I'm using plastic foil right now. Next, I arranged the first two major hardscape pieces that we collected in the forest, following the rule of 3 for structural stability. Once the wood was in place, I applied the expanding foam to create a Waterfalls skeleton. On the package, it says it hardens within 30 minutes, but I've learned to wait at least 1 full day to ensure it's completely cured. Now it's time to get rid of the cover material. For that I'm using a knife, just like a normal kitchen knife, a super sharp kitchen knife, trying to be super gentle here, because I don't want the bowl to crack, because then the whole project would be over basically if we have holes, and this took forever, really. I mean, it's better than using cardboard, to be honest, but still it took forever. That's why I had to speed up the footage here. Especially getting rid of the duct tape and of the small pieces of shopping bags here took forever, and I was so happy when I finally got out that huge chunk of shopping bag or of plastic bag down here. This was such a big relief when I got this out, but you can still see the green everywhere basically. Once hardened, the real artistry began, carving the foam with a knife to mimic the textures of natural rock. The goal was to create deep crevices and a tunnel system so the water could reach the internal filter. I used an industrial vacuum cleaner to clean up the mess of foam shavings before the first big test. I used a Jewel Biopad M, which is just some filter material or filter wool that I purchased on Amazon. Super cheap, it's like €2 or something, and added to the self-made filter. And now it's actually a filter, so now it would actually run as a filter. And we also decided to have a test run here, so I added some just tap water. In the end, it's like 1 gallon of water. That's also the reason why I won't add any animals or any large animals to this. Only Cyclops in the end will be added to the scape, nothing else. And then you can see that it's actually running. So it still looks a bit technical and not pretty at this point, but we will change this in a minute. But I think it's already super nice that it's running and actually a indoor waterfall. How cool is that? Seeing the water actually flow for the first time was an incredible relief. Even though it looked technical and raw at this stage, the sound of an indoor waterfall is pure magic. Nice. I wanted this pond right on my desk so I could appreciate the zen nature of the build while working from home every day. I can now add some filter media bags and wrap that filter media bag around the little pump that we added and wrap the filter media around that. And with that you actually have an aquarium pump. You actually have an aquarium filter rather, that filters the water on the one hand, and on the other hand it makes sure that the pump does not get clogged, because sand and smaller particles cannot get through it anymore. And now the bark that we collected at the beginning of the video really comes in handy, because now you can cover all the electrical appliances with that bark, and also the haircap moss can be covered, can be used to cover the filter. And I think it already looks pretty beautiful, to be honest, and I can't wait to put it on my desk. Before we do that, I had to change the pipe because it got dirty during the process, and you can see this is my focus facial expression. It looks a bit dumb, but I really had to fizzle it in here. But in the end, I managed to put it in, and then I cut it to the right height with this pair of scissors, just some gardening scissors. And then I actually also covered the pipe with some more moss. And this is really nice. Like this, you cannot actually see the waterfall outflow, and it actually looks like a waterfall. While doing such an aquascape or building such an aquascape, always keep in mind to water it. So just spray it with some fresh water. You can use old aquarium water or just tap water. It's also fine. But keep in mind to do that. Otherwise, your moss might dry out and die. And moss is used in, at least in the German forest, is used to be constantly wet. After a quick pipe change and some final adjustments to the plumbing, I added a layer of pristine white sand to the base. Even though some of the foam was still visible in the back, it wouldn't matter once the plants and water were in place. I like to use just a normal scoop to do that, a spoon, sorry, and I scoop up a little bit of white sand and then just cover the base with that sand. Now you can see that some expanding foam is trapped back here, but we won't see that in the end because this is the back of the scape. And then I can also use some sand to be added in the front row here, or in the front of the scape here. And from above it looks really beautiful already, I must say. It looks like a Japanese Zen garden. So absolutely beautiful. I like to use the end of the spoon to flatten it out a little bit, and this really has a therapeutic effect. And now this is when the scape looked most beautiful, in my opinion. It looked really beautiful with that. It looks like a little hill, a little Japanese mountain or something, and it actually looked really beautiful. Those sticks coming out, and you cannot even see the pipe anymore, which makes it even more natural and more beautiful. And now, in the last step of this video, actually, it's time to add some baking paper into the scape. This is the same baking paper that we used to cover the table, so I'm reusing it, and I'm cutting it in 4 equally sized pieces, and then I'm just adding it around that small hill that we created. And the reason for that is that I want to now add the pond water that we collected earlier in the video, and this would completely destroy, or not destroy, but disturb the whole sand that we put in place, and we want the sand to look nice and beautiful, right? And that's why I'm adding this baking paper here. This water is teeming with microfauna, tiny crustaceans and worms no larger than 0.5 millimeter that will provide a natural balance to this ecosystem. And because this is such a small volume, only about a gallon, 2.5 liters, I decided not to add any larger animals that might disrupt the delicate balance. But now, for the moment of truth, despite 3 months of effort, the project was technically a failure because of the structure. The structure lacked the weight to stay submerged. If I had used heavier stones to anchor it down, it might have been a different story. I still keep it in my room today, because it looks amazing, but it serves as a reminder of the trial and error inherent in the aquascaping hobby. And I still posted it on YouTube, because no one is perfect. And even though you might see on many aquascaping and aquarium channels only the most perfect scapes, I also want to share my failures, because failure is a normal part of life. And that is also a point where I want to mention that I'm so grateful for the 5 members of the Guppy family, the Guppy gang, I like to call them, who are JVP, Julius, Belgium Bugs, Dottie, and Ryder Cedric. You guys help me finance all of these scapes, all of the aquariums I have, and keep my animals fed and the lights on. Without your help, this channel wouldn't be possible. I would be interested, what's the biggest failure you ever had that you still ended up loving? Let me know in the comments below. And if you don't have enough aquascaping for today, please check out my scut video on the left hand side, where I collected scuds in the same pond that we discovered this video 2 years ago, or check out the video on the right hand side where I added dragonfly nymphs, mayfly nymphs, and much more to my ecosystem bowl. Thanks for watching.